Good morning, everybody. Welcome. I'm going to call this meeting of the Town of Westford Capital Planning Committee for Friday, January 30th, 2026 to order. Just a reminder for everyone participating that this is being recorded. So this morning, I appreciate everybody getting back to us. We're going to go over some updated quotes and requests and some changes to the capital plan that we voted on to recommend. We'll walk through those, give the committee ample time to ask questions, concerns, and go through it. And then we'll try to take a new vote on the revised recommendations at the end. We have some other business to go through, and then we should wrap up before 10 a.m. So thank you for joining. With that, Dan, I'll turn it over to you if you want to just pull up whatever we need and start going through the new requests. I think we're starting with public buildings.
Sure, I might share the agenda just so it's on here. But the first up is the museum ADA upgrades. Jeff or Mike, what do you want to speak to that?
Sure, be happy to. The museum is one of two projects that we brought before the CPC for funding this year. Just to give you, I'm not sure if anyone watched the CPC meeting, but I did give them a presentation on this a couple weeks back. But long story short, last year the town conducted a feasibility study using $30,000 in CPC funds to determine whether it would be feasible to construct a elevator addition on the side of the museum to make it fully accessible on both floors and to also add an accessible bathroom on the first floor. Mike Edwards and I worked with Tecton throughout the fall to get cost estimates on what that would look like. And we did receive those estimates back in early December. And long story short is the cost estimate to construct an elevator addition on that building would be north of $2 million, which kicks us into, OPM territory and a whole other realm of construction that we weren't really anticipating with that quote. Mike and I met with the Historic Commission on January 7th to discuss the cost estimates and what other options might exist to satisfy the accessibility requirements of the building. And the commission took a vote that at this time we would not pursue that addition. However, we are still planning to pursue the addition of the accessible bathroom on the first floor, but also the restoration of the exterior siding and other exterior elements of the building that are in great need of repair at this point. So what we're asking for now is $290,000 for design funding, which includes designer, the actual design and the scope and the bid scope for the entire project, and basically construction services throughout project closeout, which includes cost estimating, environmental assessment, materials testing. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. So basically, this is design funding to help us get ready for the next CPC cycle next year, so we can ask for actual construction funding to make these repairs and improvements to the building.
I would add to that, part of that design funding is recognizing that we're going to need a specialty architect that specializes in the historic side, because a couple of key pieces that we are going to have along the way that we wish the design professional to be responsible for will be the interactions with the State Historic Commission, as well as the Mass Architectural Access Board, because we will have to seek a waiver for not putting that elevator on in order to meet our accessibility requirements a different way.
Got it. John, go ahead.
Well, what do you think the cost is going to be for the construction? Because, $290,000 for design, you're talking about a $2 million project. And what's the guesstimate of what that construction is going to cost? It seems like it's out of line with what needs to be done. It seems awful high to me.
Well, Jeff has the number that we had for the initial construction. Jeff, did that break the elevator out yet? So we're
No.
getting that revised. We aired John on the higher side because what we do need from them, and this is actually a fairly large lift, is to do that petitioning to MAAB, which is not something we normally do in a construction project, as well as all of the interaction that we need with the State Historic Commission that holds the conservation or the historic preservation restriction on the building. We anticipate that we are going to have some significant hazardous material issues there, lead paint, asbestos, et cetera, just based on the construction time. So we know that we are, or the original work, when work was done in the past, we know we're going to have lead paint abatement. We know we're likely going to have some other hazardous materials to deal with. But it is, we don't want just any architect to do this. We need somebody that has a pretty good track record on historic work to take us through that full process.
Okay, thanks.
Tom?
Yeah, just I happen to have some experience with elevator projects, and I'm just wondering if you only look at true elevators or if you look at wheelchair lifts as well, which are significantly less.
Yes, well, the issue that you run into is a wheelchair lift, when an elevator is deemed feasible for a building, does not meet mass architectural access standards. A Lula, which is what we're looking at here as opposed to a true elevator, is kind of somewhere in between. And that's what we looked at, and that is what this cost estimate is for. It is essentially a mini elevator. But when you talk about just regular lifts, like you may see in a small scale commercial application or even a residential application, those do not qualify to meet architectural standards under MAB standards and under 521 CMR. And we've actually, I talked with somebody at Mass Architectural Access Board and kind of walked through this whole thing. And because it is feasible to construct an elevator, it's just extremely costly. The way that we would approach accessibility on that building is to make the ground floor as accessible as possible, and then address accessibility to the second floor through programmatic elements like video tours, things like that, so that basically the same programmatic experience can be had on the first floor. So there's a fair amount of work that goes into that process that you have to go through with MAB, but we're pretty confident that we're confident that the State Historical Commission will not be very happy about the proposed addition that's required. Plus, it puts us into all kinds of zoning issues, as well as to construct it. We're right on a property line of an adjacent property. So whether that can happen physically once we get into construction is still up in the air. So we're fairly sure that when we go to the state for the historic preservation perspective, that they will basically deny putting an elevator in. That in turn is used to facilitate the variance from MAB.
Christina?
I think you may have just answered my question, Mike, but I just wanted to make sure that I understand that this $290,000 ask will also cover getting that waiver for the elevator.
That's why we're on the high side,
Gotcha.
is because we haven't been through this before, but we anticipate, one, we're going to need a pretty good architect that does nothing but historic type work, or at least has a pretty deep roster of people that do. But we do need them to navigate through that process. We've talked with the Historic Commission about that and kind of how that looks, and they have agreed really we don't have the expertise to do that ourselves, so we really need to rely on somebody that can to get us through that successfully, because the last thing we want is to end up failing at the MAB level and just going in circles, as we have two state agencies fighting with each other over what we're allowed to do with that building and what we don't have to do.
Thanks.
I'm going to go as far to say as we want a great architect, not a pretty good
architect. We don't want to shortchange ourselves on this particular building. It's just right. too many opportunities for problems.
Got it. Okay. Thanks, guys. Let's keep going.
Okay. The next. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
All right. So the next one we got on the list is the DPW fire pump replacement. And I'll couple this together with the fire alarm control panel. These were both recommendations made in the Tecton report. As we dug in a little deeper and vetted what their suggestions were, we were able to come down with a revised, smaller scope than what we were originally proposing back in the fall. So what we've done is we've actually deferred the control panel replacement out to 29, because at this point it's the control panel itself isn't really giving us any issues. The biggest issues that need to be addressed in the immediate future is the fire pump. And the pump itself might need just an overhaul, but really what's the most urgent matter is the replacement of the fire pump controller and the jockey pump controller in the building. So we do have an estimate or a quote in hand from the vendor that actually installed the system way back when the building was constructed. And the estimate was for about $65,000 for the controller itself. And then we've left some contingency money in there if we do need to take any action with regard to replacing the pump at that point. But at this point, the vendor's telling me that that pump should still have useful life on it. So at this, the $112,000 is to make the fire pump fully operational again. And we'll be back in a couple of years for the fire alarm control panel at that point. So,
Got it.
all right. Moving on. This is our big ticket item here, and obviously we went from $250,000 in the fall to over $1 million now. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions about the town hall roof reinforcement and replacement, as well as the cupola restoration there. So in the fall, we were working with the Tecton recommendation as a priority one to replace the town hall roof. Anyone who works in town hall understands the need, or that this is an urgent replacement that we need to make. Throughout the fall, doing some more research, Chief Dennehy was kind enough to loan me his drone team, and we got some excellent drone footage of the roof, which I'd be happy to share with the committee if they were interested to see it. But it's clear that we're not just looking at a roof replacement, we're also looking at a restoration of the cupola as well. Where the slate roof ties into the cupola, there is, indications that there's probably a good amount of rot and some wood that needs to be repaired, replaced, and restored on that cupola. So I do have quotes in hand from Alpine Environmental, who does historic restorations for the cupola, and those quotes are for $90,000. I also have quotes from a contractor on the state user guide. They gave us two estimates: one to replace the roof with a natural slate roof, which is what's on there now, but also they gave us the option to do a synthetic slate roof, which those products have come a long way in the last few years. So we do have options. The natural slate roof is twice the cost of the synthetic slate roof. I do think that either product has their pros and cons. When Mike and I met with the Historic Commission on the 7th of January, they did vote in favor of replacing the roof with a natural slate, which is, historically accurate for the building. So the slate itself is $650,000. In order for them to warranty the installation of the roof, they would want to replace the plywood underlayment under the roof. So that's an additional $60,000. And then 20% design contingency and estimated design services. That brings us right north of $1 million. So $1,056,000.
I want to add to that. So we did bring this also for a discussion with the PTBC, and there were a number of questions on the slate versus synthetic, which are also questions that Jeff and I have and have asked. And what we discussed with PTBC, and Tom's welcome to jump in as well, was we really aren't in a position now to make a decision between slate and synthetic. And we need essentially to engage. We have to have a design professional, an architect, to do the scope for the cupola, the scope for that. What we're hoping to do is pair this RFS for architectural services with the museum, which would basically let us get a good quality historic person that one of their tasks on the roof side for this building will be to do a much more in-depth study, recommendation, and analysis around slate versus um, slate versus synthetic, so that we understand what we're trading off. We don't recommend at this point that that decision be made because we haven't seen the materials. We haven't had somebody explain the pros and cons. We haven't had the structural side of it looked at in terms of required reinforcements, et cetera. So what Jeff has presented is really, this is the option if we go to slate. We want the PTBC and the HPC to be involved in that design and the discussion around ultimately which material is selected. And I will point out when he mentioned that the slate is roughly twice the cost of the synthetic. That's not the full million. So you're not talking about saving 500K. That's just the material difference and a little bit of potential structural work associated. So the overall savings would only be, Jeff, what, 300,000?
About $330,000 in savings if we went with synthetic.
Yeah, so we would need to, we want, samples. We want to see what it's looked like on other buildings. And then ultimately we want the PTBC, with guidance from the HPC to help us make that decision rather than just saying, this is a project to replace slate. This is a project to replace the roof. The decision between slate and synthetic will be made at some point in that process. So hopefully that clarifies.
Well, guys, we note on there that we put a application to community preservation. Will synthetic versus slate matter for them? I mean, I assume it would, right? If it's community preservation, are they gonna lean one way or another on funding this, depending on what we replace it with?
We didn't get a specific vote from them when I presented, but the general tone in the room felt like they would prefer the natural slate option. But I agree with Mike. I think we really need to lay out the pros and cons of each option and narrow that down as we get further into the design.
Yeah, and we may find that when we start looking at those two options, the biggest consideration that Jeff and I have is obviously performance, but the weight is a huge consideration. And so a little bit more, I mean, we have done, the architect, when they looked at this, even when the roof assessment was done a number of years ago, that did not include a really in-depth structural assessment and what can those rafters hold, what can all the bearings that carry the columns and everything that carry weight down, how does all that work too? That's got to be part of what we look at in ultimately making the decision. But I think the decision between slate and synthetic, this is not the time to make that until we have all the information, but we have to get the design underway to get to that point.
Okay, got it. Jamie, what do you got?
Sorry. Do we know, so when will that decision be made? Because I do think that is going to affect, as a member of CPC, being part of the initial conversation that when this was originally presented, I know there are at least a couple members that are going to push for it to be the actual slate if they do, want to fund it. So when does that decision get made?
Our intention in talking through this with Jeff is basically to start preparing an RFS for an architect soon, so that we can be prepared after town meeting to go out to the market and make our selection at that point. Jeff, your experience on kind of this process on design as far as timeline, I would assume we would probably be at that point within 6 months or so.
Yeah, basically, if we're approved at town meeting for this project funding, it's going to take a good 6 months to really prepare the scope and design. So realistically, this project begins the summer of 27 would basically be when the work actually would happen. So
you won't know until after town meeting what you're going to do. So you're going to come to CPC and ask for the funding like you're talking about it now. You don't know what it's going to be, synthetic versus slate.
Is that
correct?
But CPC's recommendation was to ask for the full kit and caboodle for the more expensive natural slate.
Exactly. Yeah.
That was based on their recommendation, was to go for the natural slate, and with the caveat that it could potentially change to synthetic, but they figured go on the high side and ask for the natural.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Jamie. Tom, what do you got?
So I think the total cost of ownership is important. What the maintenance is on each going forward. I understand that you're saying you don't want us to be debating that piece, but even $300,000 difference, that's big in the overall program as far as I see. So that's overall capital program. That's another project potentially. So um, I struggle with I see where people are coming from that historically it's accurate. However, how many people actually look at the roof ever besides with a drone? So that would be my point going forward.
Well, the one thing, and that is, Tom, I think that's a great point, and that's something that we want that to be part of the discussion when we make that decision. I mean, it depends who you talk to in terms of how long these roofs last. Conventional wisdom is on a slate roof, you're talking a 100-year roof. These synthetic systems are 50-year typical warranty. And life expectancy. Maintenance, I don't know that I certainly don't have any experience with maintenance on synthetic slate roofs, but yes, we'll be looking at total cost ownership and kind of doing a life cycle analysis on it. But significant difference anecdotally on the two products in terms of long-term lifespan. So
Yeah, I agree, guys. I think on this one, we're kind of in a spot where I agree that they did the right thing by asking for the higher amount, and that's what CPC asks. And especially if we think there's a chance CPC is going to recommend it, we're kind of the cart's before the horse at this point. I don't think we can
it's
opine on whether we want to approve it if it's Slade or if it's not. I think we've got to decide as a committee, do we believe that, funding the replacement is important? And we're going to need to make our decision on that and just trust that CPC and others who have in permanent town building, when they have their discussions post, that they'll make the most prudent decision, both aesthetically, both, time-wise, both everything for the town. So I would say on this one, we need to kind of, and it is a big number, so I'm not taking the number, I'm not discounting the number, but I would say let's just keep our thoughts to, do we think we should approve going forward with an improvement on the roof, if that makes sense.
Gotta do it.
Tom, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just want to reiterate and support Mike on the statement about the thing about the synthetic roofs. It's also very much a changing field that one of the members, and I can't remember who it was, had some very bad experiences with the synthetic roof. Wasn't that right, Mike?
Yeah, and it's a newer material. I mean,
It's a
the
newer material.
63 main has it, and you ask one person, they can tell the difference. You ask another, they can't.
Well,
So
also I asked one person, does it perform to the 50 year? And ask another person, they said no, it didn't perform.
nobody's had it for 50 years yet. So that's
Right.
So
yeah,
it's a mess. And
yeah.
the PT the Permanent Town Building Committee, we run around and around and around and around on this, and we really do need more information. So yeah, we need to approve the big number so that we can actually study it and get
Yeah.
somebody who can really give us some better information.
Yeah, and I'll just say it again. PTBC will be heavily involved in this project. We want to see them be involved in all of these maintenance projects. So
Great. Not seeing any other hands on this one, so why don't we keep going? We can move to the Beacon Street roof.
Okay, so Beacon Street, 30 Beacon Street roof replacement and building stabilization project. The original ask in the fall was for 564. I have bumped that up to an even 600K. The reason being, over the last year and a half, we have had a couple instances where we've had an intermittent power issue in the building, and we have determined that it's related to the power feed that comes underground from Beacon Street into the building. In all honesty, it's bizarre. We can't really put a finger onto why it happens and when it happens. But we can only conclude that it has something to do with the conduit for which the power feed is running through to the building. And it did rear its ugly head last week, of course, right before the impending snow weather over the weekend. But what happens is we basically lose a phase of power in the building, and we lose our cameras, we lose the garage door openers. As you can imagine, my guys were thrilled that they had to manually get these behemoth garage door opened by hand during the snowstorm. So this is an urgent matter. We do have a quote in hand from Village Electric to replace the feed to the building, which will have to be done after we remove that modular component that's been on the side of the building. That's where the current power feed runs to. But once that's removed, we intend to bring a new feed and a new conduit to the main part of the building. So that additional money is $30,000 to replace the feed to the building. So that's the reason for the adjustment on that one.
Got it. Any questions? Pretty straightforward. I guess if you get caught like that, you kind of know. Maybe it's fortunate that it happens so that we know to do it right on this go around. So
Yep.
Okay. Keep going.
That's it for me.
I want to Kyle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to jump in, Dan.
Hey,
If
Kyle.
I can do it if you want me
Nope,
to.
I got
It's just
it.
okay.
Yeah, so this project, it's the same as Paul presented in the fall. It's a condition assessment of all of our town-owned structures to allow us to do some better long-term planning. The only change presented today is a change in funding source. We've determined that it is eligible for Chapter 90 funding. So our intent would be to fund it out of that fund rather than free cash.
Great. Any questions on that? I don't think anybody's going to argue with you on that one, Kyle. Awesome. All right. Thank you, Kyle. And Water Enterprise?
Okay, that's me, I guess.
Yep. To you, Mark.
Good morning, everyone.
All right.
So we're looking, basically the water department reads meters two ways. One of them is via an automated system. We currently have two collectors, basically antennas, and that allows us to read meters remotely. The second mechanism is physical drive-by of addresses. It's also a radio system, but we have to be in the neighborhood to actually read the meters. Right now, we have anywhere from 45% consistent to 60% inconsistent coverage of the town. And we've been planning on installing a third collector for quite some time. This third collector, which we're looking at the Francis Hill tank, would get us up to roughly 90% coverage over time. I say over time because it coincides with meter replacement. As we upgrade meters and radios, that also, helps with the reception of the collectors. So anyway, yeah, that's what I'm looking for, a third collector. It's most likely the final collector that we'll need. I don't see us getting beyond 90% coverage for the town. Yeah, that's it. It's basically an automated meter reader.
Great. Guys, questions on this one? And Dan, I assume this is funded out of Water Enterprise, just in case anyone asks.
It is.
Yep. Okay.
Oh, and Dan, did I send you the updated quote?
No.
Okay, it is the 37,237 that is in the capital request. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
You're so
Thanks, Mark.
specific, Mark, that I assumed you had a detailed quote behind it.
Par-
Nobody really goes to the 237 unless they're
I have a quote.
we certainly appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay. Any questions, guys, for Mark? Okay, and then we're gonna go to Jack Walsh. It looks like it's just no difference in the cost, Dan. It's just that we submitted an app to community preservation.
Yeah, so thanks, Paul. So back when we were first discussing this project in the fall, there was some uncertainty whether the project would be eligible for CPA funds or wouldn't be. So we erred on the side of conservativeness and put it in as free cash. Since then, our leadership had reached out to the town council and it was determined that it was eligible. So this will be included with the other two projects that we're presenting to community preservation next Wednesday.
Okay, great. Looks like we got a lot of requests for community preservation on here and the changes. Sorry, Jamie. Any questions on this one, folks? Okay, good. Dan, is that all the specifics? I know we're going to get into the Amoresco contract, but any other specific changes that we need to talk through that's come in the last day or two?
No, that's the only thing that changed since, or those are the only things that changed since November 14th, but there's a placeholder there in case anybody has a follow-up question on any of the capital items. We do have a lot of the department heads here, so if not, then we can move on.
Any questions, team? John, go ahead.
Do we need to vote on it?
What's that?
Do we need to vote on it?
Yeah, we're going to. We're going to go through the performance contract
Okay.
update with Amoresco, then we're going to take a vote on it.
Okay. Sorry about that.
It's okay. It's all right. But yes, we will. Anybody else? Okay, let's move on to the update, Dan.
Okay, so thanks, Paul. So I won't spend a whole lot of time explaining a performance contract and how it works. I think most people understand it, but if you have any questions, please let me know. So just a tiny bit of history. Back in 2022, a warrant article was brought before town meeting. It was passed to do the Cameron Senior Center project, HVAC replacement, and an amount was authorized of $1.1 million. Dan has that currently in the budget starting in 28. So that's part of our projections. That ties back into the conversation over how we are approaching this performance contract. When we originally started the work with Amoresco, it included really an entire scope across, I think 11 buildings at the time, to do really everything that we identified needing to be done for that performance contract. When that process kind of, I would say, fizzled a little bit for myriad reasons, we just went ahead and started doing projects, and we're really about a third of the way through that Amoresco scope without spending any money. So just finding a lot of creative ways to fund things, leveraging grants, leveraging rebates, incentives, and our net metering credits that we had floating in the National Grid Bank. And it has allowed us really to look at a different way to approach this performance contract and think about it more as a procurement method as opposed to a financing mechanism. And we believe that we don't believe, we know at this point that we can work with DOER, with Amoresco, to take a phased approach to a performance contract where our first phase would actually be the Cameron Senior Center and the Blanchard Solar Project, both of which have been approved. And we believe now, after getting some more final numbers from the Cameron, that if we go back to the original design scope that we had before the prices escalated significantly because of a desire to fully electrify that building, that we can complete that project with the amount that's already been appropriated. So what we would look for is and we should be getting final numbers on Cameron within the next week or so. We're keeping a placeholder on the warrant for right now, but our expectation at this point is that we're end up going to pull that out. And the WA roof was originally part of this conversation, along with the rooftop units, as was the BMS, the building management system process or project, as well as a few other bits and pieces that we haven't finished yet. We're looking at now the BMS as being a phase two that we're hoping to put before fall town meeting as part of that performance contract. And then that gives us a little bit more time to pursue the WA project as a potential split between the HVAC portion moving into the performance contract as a phase three, and the roof moving into an MSBA project and do a cost share with them. So we've got some flexibility on the back end on how we do this, but one, we think that we've got the funds and the necessary approvals to do camera now, and do it under the existing approvals. And the BMS would be a very good candidate for performance contracts simply because of the procurement methodology, the fact that we can work directly with the contractor as opposed to having to hire an architect and an OPM and do this through Chapter 149. So we've been auditing the buildings again to look at the specific requirements around BMS. We're getting that scope dialed in, but it makes a lot of sense just to push that into a second phase. So right now we're wrapping up the IGA with Amoresco to reflect those changes, and we'll be going through the DOER process to get that phasing concept approved. But it's going to allow us to kind of pick and choose how we use the performance contract, the advantages of it, and not really take some of the hits of some of the disadvantages of it, just by really being creative and a little bit more flexible. So happy to answer any questions on it. And Dan, or Jeff, if I miss anything, throw it in there.
I think you eloquently summed that up.
Just a smidge under 2 minutes, as Paul would say.
Christina.
Mike, so you had mentioned that Cameron HVAC can proceed for the 1.1 million, you think, but what are the changes to that system?
So it basically is a one-to-one replacement, so VRFs. We are doing some additional electrification over what was there previously, and the units are significantly more efficient than what we had in place. It does not make sense to spend $5 million to fully electrify that building. It would require us to shut it down. We've talked about this with Tom Teller and CASC, well, Tom as the rep for CASC, and just looking at the downtime, the needs for the building, he agrees this was the most effective solution. We're still dialing in exactly what it looks like, but we think we have a good system that will last us a long time and address the issues. The other piece that we are doing as part of that, that was going to happen under the full electrification, is we still are going to keep the gas-fired water system, the hydronic system that's there, but we're going to integrate the controls and have some other mechanical work that make them work together as opposed to fighting each other, which is what they do now. And when I talk about partial electrification, we will have some level of heating potentially provided by that new system that will offset some of the normal use of the gas-fired system. So the use of that system will go down. So we will see some energy efficiency savings. We will see some carbon reduction. But overall, we need to get that building done. The other issue as we look at a more robust electrification of that building is we don't have a generator that can handle it. That is a warming shelter. That is an emergency shelter. So it spirals out of control when we go to full electrification for that building, and it's just not the right move for us.
Yep. Okay. I just had one other question. So when you're sort of piecing together this performance contract, using it for procurement, but not necessarily the financing piece. I know a big part of the financing piece was it adds like a third.
Correct.
30% escalator in there for a bunch of different things. So are we avoiding all of that? What is that?
Yeah, where we use the performance contract, we will obviously have that escalator in there.
Okay.
When we talk about the things that were excluded, so this is where I would say the creativity gets in there. So the $3.8 million worth of stuff we have already done that we pulled out of that Amoresco scope, we avoid that 30% cost. We're financing it at 0% also through on-bill repayment and using net metering credits to offset some of the rest of it, plus some grants here and there as we've kind of hit these things. What's interesting, and this is where Beth Greenblatt has earned her fee, is we are effectively to meet the requirements of the performance contract legislation, we get to count those savings as part of the overall project. It's really it's some of it's an accounting exercise, but what we ultimately don't have is we don't have debt service on all the rest of the work. So all the LED stuff, all of that, 0%. So we're losing the 30% on top of that in not having to pay that. Plus, we're saving the debt service. So ultimately, we're being able to get a lot of projects done with about 5 different financing mechanisms, and then kind of weaving back and forth between the procurement method that allows us to do those things and have more control over the projects.
Okay,
So
great. Thanks.
long way of stating it, but it's been an exercise, for sure.
Tom, what do you got?
Okay. Yeah, so you mentioned splitting out the WA roof project. Can you talk about how that impacts timeline and what risks we assume with really aging and failing equipment?
I'll let Jeff speak to that. If I've got anything to add, I certainly will.
So it was a stretch for us to try and include the replacement of the roof into the performance contract because it would have been hard for Amoresco to guarantee any amount of savings or efficiencies gained from it. However, there most certainly will be when you're switching from a black roof to a white PVC roof. So what our plan is to leave the HVAC portion in the performance contract, and our goal would be when the window opens to apply to get into the accelerated repair program, which is the same program we did the Blanchard roof with. That window opens in the spring of 2027. So our goal would be to apply to get into that, and we would find out if we were accepted into that program in the fall of 27. And then hopefully would be coming before town meeting in the spring of 28 for design funding. The timelines, the HVAC scope is a monumentally huge scope of work that's going to require a lot of design time and a lot of engineering. And we believe that the roof and the HVAC are going to kind of line up very nicely if we're lucky enough to get accepted into that accelerated repair program. So it would really put the roof out for construction to about the summer of 29. But we would know at that point what our HVAC design would be if there's any changes to the curbs on the roof. So we really need to know what that HVAC design looks like before the roof designer can set about their work. So I do think that if everything jives the way we're hoping, that the two projects should be able to sync together nicely.
And I would expand on that to say, yes, there's challenges in terms of potential, obviously, roof performance in the interim, but I do feel that we need some additional time to decide what we see as the most appropriate path on HVAC in that building. At the moment we're proceeding like we can wrap it into a performance contract, with more efficient systems, some level of electrification. But if we decide instead to look at the HVAC through an MSBA process or otherwise, we may be subject to significant additional requirements to electrify, which that is a huge issue on WA, multiple millions of additional dollars. So we feel that the extra time is actually going to serve us better as we look to see, what is the goal for that building? What do we want to see in terms of decarbonization versus cost? And have some time to make that decision on which path we go with that. And we do have starting in the spring, kind of moving into summer, we are working with CASC to do a decarbonization planning that will wrap into our capital plan so that we understand really what is the impact of trying to electrify that building.
Okay, I'm concerned about hobbling together the HVAC system for the next 3 years when we've been told that parts are increasingly difficult to come by. And if one of those fails during school session, can we actually educate our kids? And if we can't, that is a huge issue for an investment. So I'm just going to make that.
That concerns me as well, Tom. But with that being said, the conditions we're dealing with today have been ongoing for quite a few years, and I think that we're going to have to continue to triage these situations as they come up. And I think a lot of it's managing expectations and communicating with people. And, as the situations arise, I think it'll be incumbent upon me to make sure I'm managing, the expectations of the administration at the school, but also making sure Dr. Chu's, aware of what's going on. And, if we have to move a class or a program, currently only 30% of the building is air conditioned. And so we've been able to get creative with some workarounds with that. So unfortunately, it is urgent, but we definitely don't want to jump the gun on the design and the planning of what that HVAC is going to look like. So it is going to require time to really dig into the engineering piece of it. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to continue to fight those battles as they come over the next couple of years.
Christina, what do you got?
Just quick, I just wanted to make sure that this whole WA roof will include potential for solar if it makes sense, and that's part of the plan.
100%.
Yeah, MSBA, that's one of the caveats with the MSBA that, any accelerated repair roof projects they're doing, their intent is to make it solar ready.
Yeah, that's too much square footage for me not to have panels on it. So we have to plan around that.
Okay, thanks.
Folks, anybody else on this? Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right. So Dan, I guess we'll move to vote now. I didn't hear anybody else have any other questions on any old items or whatnot. So we could probably let the folks who not on the committee go. You're welcome to stay if you want, but I don't think we'll have any more questions for you as we move to the vote. So thank you all for your time. I appreciate you all joining, but
One thing, Paul, I think before you guys move to a vote is there is a potential, although I think it's pretty low at this point, that when we get our final numbers on Cameron, there's a potential that we may need to come back for a small amount of additional appropriation. I mean, we are about 90%, 99%, well, I would say 98% sure that post rebates, we're going to be well under that 1.1. But there's always the potential that we may need to get up, 100,000 or so just to get over the hump when we get those final numbers. So I don't know how you want to approach that from a vote standpoint. It's going to be about a week or so before we know for sure. But I don't know if you want to, I don't know how you would want to approach that from a vote. I'm happy to defer to Kristen or Dan to chime in on that, but we may come and say we're $80,000 short, or something.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the first time. I appreciate it. It wouldn't be the first time. Normally we go with the best estimates that we have for the committee with those changes as they come through. Kind of like we are just talking about with the performance contracts. We deal with them as they come. If they're big enough, we can call another meeting. Sometimes we can just send an email and get approvals through that. So we can we'll deal with it as it comes. If we felt like you're giving the best estimate here. So if it does come in higher, then we'll go back to the committee if necessary.
Works for me. Just wanted to make sure we were 100% clear on that.
No, I appreciate it. It wouldn't be the first time, put it that way. I don't know if it'd be the first time in the last year. So we're good. We're good. Thank you. All right. Folks, any other questions or comments on anything before we go to a vote on the revised recommendations?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Good. Dan, do you have the straw person, or do you have the sheet you want to pull up that shows the changes on it?
See here.
I mean, I guess the big things are obviously with the roof. I mean, the changes that we talked through, right? So there's a few updates, although the funding sources changed quite a bit too because of CPC and whatnot. So,
Right, so the total plan dropped from 37.4 to 13.9, just because of the excluded debt totals are off there. There's just small variations to what we have within each line item out there before, except for CPA, which of course the roof and we actually had the quote for the museum design, so that bumped up quite a bit. So
and free cash goes down about 200,000. I mean, that's usually free cash is one of the big ones we look at as well, right? So
Yep.
CPC takes the brunt. It's just basically CPC taking the brunt of the increases and a slight decrease to free cash with that. So, okay. So, folks, here's what we will do. And Dan, keep me honest on this, but we'll move to a vote to recommend the updated capital plan as presented. Just a reminder, we pulled 51 Main out of the overall recommendations last time and voted on it separately. I haven't heard any questions or changes or anything like that, so I think we can leave that vote as is and just revote on the revised plan excluding 51 Main. Sound good to you, Dan?
Yeah, is everybody okay with that? Nobody changed their minds on 51 Main?
No.
So, okay.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to approve the capital plan
Thank you,
Second.
Dan.
with the exception of 51 Main.
Second.
Thank you, John. So I'm going to go through roll call, and I just have my list here, so I apologize, but I think I got everybody that's here. So I'm a yes. Dan,
Yes.
um, Tom L,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
Tom W,
Yes.
Jared,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Dr. Chu,
Yes.
Kristen.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, that was easy, folks. Thank you guys. And we're on time too. I love keeping everybody on time. I get yelled at if we go over, so thank you guys. That was very good. I appreciate it. Let's keep moving so I don't throw us off time. I've got 23 minutes with you guys according to this. So let's go to approval of the minutes. So Dan sent out the minutes with the last update. Again, as I always ask, if you do have small edits or nits, please just email those in. But if you have anything structural or any changes or questions, comments, concerns on anything in there, now would be a good time just to get it on the record. If not, I'd ask for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, guys. And again, I'll go through the same roll call real quick. I'm a yes. Dan,
Yes.
Tom L,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
Tom W,
Yes.
Jared,
Yeah.
John,
Yes.
Dr. Chu,
Yes.
and Kristen.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, now we'll go to old business. Is anybody, Dan, I don't know if you had anything, but I'll give everybody an option first before we get into any future meetings or anything. Anything that anybody on the committee wants to bring up that outside the purview of what we discussed today, but they'd like to discuss. Now's your time. Christina.
I just had a quick question, and this may be out of our scope, but it just sort of occurred to me that the CPC applications, the total, I think is more than CPC may have available. So what's the backup plan?
So
It's a good
Jesse, did we
question.
figure
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Jesse, did we figure that out that we had a couple closeouts that were able to cover
So
everything
There's
that was out
currently
there?
enough funds to fund all 17 applications if that's the direction they want to go in.
Can you repeat that again, Jesse? You do have enough to do all, like not just the town ones, but everything?
Yeah, if they wanted to fund everything, there is enough.
Okay. All right. I didn't think there was, including the debt service, but that's good to know. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, and Christina, just to your point, it is outside our purview. Like we're not supposed to. It's not. We are not tasked with finding the funding sources. That being said, I always like these questions. I think it's fair to ask. I think when we have the time in the forum, it's good because it does inform people's decisions on whether or not they want to vote to approve, right? Where the money's coming from.
Yeah,
And so.
my angle is more the prioritization. If
100%.
we had
So
to
I
come
appreciate the
back.
question. And I would just say to the committee, like, please feel free, especially for the newer folks, as you're learning as we go through. These questions are fine, but it is outside our purview, right? So, like, we won't decide on that. It's not up to us. But when we have time and we've got the folks on the call that can help answer those questions for you to inform you more, to help your decisions with capital, please ask. Those are, I think that's it's the right use of our time. Jamie, what's up?
I'm just, yeah, backing up on what Christina said. So like, that was my question. Like, how does that work? So let's say community preservation doesn't approve the roof. I'm just saying, I'm not saying that's going to happen. Let's say it happens. Like, does do they come back to Capital next year
No.
for that? No,
No, Dan
it's
and
just
team would work. The team would work to find out funding sources.
okay.
We don't approve the funding sources, so they don't need to come back to us. I mean, of course, if Dan and Kristen decide that something should come back to capital based on changes and what, it can always be brought back, but there's no requirement. No, we give our recommendations to Kristen on what projects we think should be funded and should be put in place, and then the use of funds and where it comes from is to our task outside of the purview of the committee.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
it's a good question, Jamie, because it comes up every year multiple times because it does, like I said, influence people's thoughts and decisions on what they want to approve or not, depending on where the money may or may not be coming from. So, while
Yeah,
it's
I
not
mean,
our
and this is
purview,
sort of why I,
yeah,
wanted to be part of this committee was because I do feel like there's a disconnect between like CPC always, the comments I've heard being on it in the last year are like, why did this project get kicked to us?
yep,
Kind of thing and frustration there. So I just want to be able to bridge that gap to
yeah,
have those conversations there. A lot of things usually, even if they complain about them, they do get approved, but it is still, for there to like to be able to understand
yeah.
why things are there is helpful.
I think that's great, and I think that's why it's helpful to have folks from a lot of different boards and committees on capital as well and have those pieces so that people are getting the full story, right? So I think
Yeah,
we appreciate you being on both.
thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? Dr. Shu.
Paul, I don't know if would it be worth providing just a quick update as to where we're at with the Robinson School Building Committee, just as
I would
for
love it.
informational purposes, as there's three of us on this committee that are on that committee as well too.
I would love it.
We're this is it in 2 weeks. We'll be going to the MSBA for the design selection process, and the way that that works is there were I think it was 9 firms. Kristen, is that correct? Yeah, Kristen and Tom that provided applications and proposals, and then the MSBA puts together their design selection panel. We have three. The district has 3 votes on it, or 3 members sit on that, and it's a 13-member committee. So the rest of it is determined by the MSBA, and that'll take place where we'll review all of those proposals together, and that group will determine who the potential design firm would be. We don't get to select it ourselves. We have a voice at the table, but we don't. It's not just our decision. The timeline, we're working with the OPM Vertex, and they've been on board for a couple of months now. And the timeline that we've been looking at would be that this feasibility study would take us through to the fall of 27, where at that time we believe we would be prepared to have an actual project to go to the town for potential funding approval in that timeline.
Right.
So that's what we're looking at. We'll be looking at a lot of community engagement. Once this firm is selected, which would be in the next couple of weeks, then I think we're going to kind of hit the ground running, and there'll be a lot of different pieces as they look at this whole project in general, looking at all the different options that we've put before them.
Great. That's a great update. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else have anything for the group?
I just want to mention, and I forget if it was mentioned before, the town facilities assessment and master plan has been completed. The select board received an update from Tectona Architects in early January. So I'd encourage people on the capital planning committee, if you haven't reviewed that tape or the report, to do that. As you noted in Jeff Goodwin's presentations, a lot of the tier 1 projects are included in the capital plan this year. And we'll be using that Tecton report as our guide moving forward and building out our capital plan moving forward with that template. So if anyone has any further interest in reviewing that, please feel free. If you can't find anything, please reach out to Mike or I and we can assist you.
Thanks, Kristen. Anybody else? Not seeing hands, so I'll give you guys 15 minutes back if I can get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Dr. Thank you, Jamie. I'm gonna go through a quick roll call. I'm a yes, Dan.
Yes.
Tom L.
Yes.
Jamie. Jamie. Assume Jamie's a yes. Christina.
Yes.
Tom W. Gonna give him a yes too. Jared.
I'm a yes. Yes.
Thanks, buddy. John.
Yes.
Dr. Chu.
Yes.
Kristen.
Yes.
Awesome. We are done. Everybody gets their time back on this beautiful 2-degree whatever weather day it is. Dr. Chu, good luck with the schools with all this weather. Looks like we're going to get lucky Sunday. Knock on wood and not get snow to hammer this again. But everybody enjoy the cold weekend. And if I don't talk to you, enjoy the Super Bowl.
Thank you very much. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Thank you guys for your time.